Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast where comedians gather to discuss their natural habitat. Dark basements full of drunk people with microphones that are somehow always sticky. Each episode I ask someone funny what comedy means to them. There will be stories, there will be tangents, accidental philosophy, and at least one moment where everyone forgets the original question. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 2,000 different comedians perform live comedy, and you can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. Please also take a moment to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is one of the most exciting new voices in UK stand-up, often drawing on identity and transition, bringing sharp writing, absurd honesty, and brilliantly self-aware storytelling to the stage. She was recently crowned Leicester Comedian of the Year 2026, and has also been a finalist in LGBTQ+ New Comedian of the Year, and featured in the BBC New Comedy Awards. It's comedian Chloe Reynolds. When you think about the earliest days when you were growing up, do you think about comedy? Did it loom large for you back then?
I think so, yeah. From memory, it was just the terrestrial TV, and whether it was more childlike sort of things, but
Mm.
yeah, I definitely remember there being like, I think it was like, oh God, it might have been called Zag or something. There was just like a massive sketch show on ITV, and I remember being obsessed with that. So yeah, it's played a prominent part.
hmm
But stand up particularly, it was probably a little later. Yeah,
Right. How did it go from sort of seeing SAG? How did that change into you wanting to do comedy for yourself?
because it was bubbling around in my head,
Mm.
and then someone I knew at work did one of these kind of, the ultra courses or something like that. And
Right.
I was in like the middle of nowhere. I was in Staffordshire. I didn't even think like there were no opportunities to start comedy, and it wasn't really bustling in my head.
Mm.
But then I was like, oh, this is something you can do. And then over a space of a year, I just started going more to comedy shows.
Mm.
And I started going to like Beat the Frog up in Manchester to watch and things like that. And
Yeah.
I was kind of like, and it was coinciding with certain parts of my personal life where I was like, I think I've got a good story to tell,
hmm
and I think I'd like to try and give this a go.
Yeah. Did you do a course with the showcase or did you just skip that and jump in?
I did it DIY. Yeah, I um none of the courses were local to me at all.
Sure.
So I basically was just working on a laptop over a set for a few weeks. I don't know, it feels like maybe a few weeks. It's hard to remember the exacts. And then I'd heard about a scratch night,
hmm
which is something that they run in Stoke, where I'm from, every now and again. And basically, it's mainly spoken word or people doing like excerpts of maybe sketches or sort of ideas of, I guess, pilots that they've been writing and scripts.
Yeah.
And I was like, would you be okay if someone came up and like just tried to do 5 minutes of comedy? And yeah, they put me on, and that was my first ever gig, really, which was on a very kind of mixed bill with a lot of creatives, but
Mm.
it wasn't a comedy lineup per
Right.
se.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how did it go?
they were very polite. They were very nice. Is the best way of putting it. Because I haven't got a video of it, but I've got a couple of videos from very early sets,
Mm.
and there was no performing ability. The jokes were a lot poorer. Um, there's only like one premise that has survived, even though the joke has completely changed, but the premise is the same.
Mm.
And yeah, bless her. I sort of look at it back, and I'm just like, there's always an element I find of you have to have a lot of self-belief when you're starting out,
Mm.
because barely anyone starts good,
Yeah.
and you just have to have an element of belief in your vision,
Mm.
and what you think of it. And yeah, I think stage time has been very valuable to me, is the best way of saying it. Yeah, I certainly wasn't a natural performer.
Mm.
And yeah, joke writing was a skill I had yet to learn at that point. But they were very nice. It was the very creative side of Stoke. So it was which sounds like a paradox, but there is there is that element, and they were very loving and very kind. But I think it kind of, you know, I got laughs for jokes that didn't deserve laughs, but just to have that experience, it kind of allowed me to go in with a bit of confidence.
Mm.
Because I think the early days, it's literally like, have I got enough resilience?
Mm.
And is there enough to keep fighting through and go through that sort of battle that you're having of like, is this for me? And so on. And when you had an overly kind audience, that kind of filled your safety bar, like your health bar in a
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
If you're on Tekken or something, it just kind of boosted it, even though you were playing on the really easy levels. It was nice to have that. Okay, well, I had a nice response in Stoke, so let's ignore the fact that when you did an open mic in Manchester, it was complete silence for 5 minutes.
So you talk about it as this battle, fighting a video game. Did you get the bug nonetheless? Was it something you did it and you
Yes,
just thought, I have to have more of this?
yes. And I was like, I have to find a way to become good at this. I loved it. I loved the world that I saw, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Mm.
And I had, for exposing that, I was seeing what people were achieving, and I was like, okay, like this is what I'd like to achieve myself,
Yeah.
and um, therefore I kind of immersed myself in, and I knew that I was starting from a bit of a backwards position because I didn't have natural flair for it. But I just poured myself in. And there was also the added dilemma because obviously we've not addressed it on the pod yet, but like I'm a trans woman,
Hmm.
and my essentially coming out was very melodramatically through comedy. My first gig was the first time I stepped out of the house in like a dress,
Hmm.
and I was kind of like, well, eventually this is gonna come out. Um, it's a small world after all. And I want to be proudly out and using this as a creative, powerful tool.
Mm.
But right now, I'm not powerful. I'm rubbish at this. And I need to make those things align so that
Mm.
not just being taken seriously on a comedy level, but being taken seriously for like, I guess my personal self as well.
Yeah. Forgive me if my question sounds idiotic, but it sounds like you had a twin rebirth, if you like, both through what you wanted to do, which is comedy, and who you wanted to be, and sort of coincided. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was that. And it's going to sound really weird, but like whenever I like my mum, bless her, she's lovely, but back in the day, there were various times of coming out or like trying to bring up the conversation,
Right.
and it would kind of get pushed back of like, very old school approach where it was like, well, this is a fetish. Like, why do you need to bring this like outside, further,
Mm.
like beyond your bedroom? And I was like, okay, well, I need to find a way of showing her that it's not that.
Mm.
And I guess what I was seeing and, from the person I knew at work, and also from going to shows, I was like, I think this is the right fit for that, and yeah, it just so happened to coincide at the same time,
Mm.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that make it easier or harder to do comedy?
Um, I don't. There's not many case studies for it, is there? It's quite. It's your own personal journey, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's hard to. I think it gave me a real fire.
Right.
I think is probably the best way. I'm not denying that no one works hard, in comedy at all, but
Mm,
I for sure was plugging every spare hour that I could into writing.
mm.
I was so disciplined. Funnily enough, when you get good at it, the discipline starts to drop. I was plugging everything in, going like because I did like a couple of open mics before COVID. And then I'd got the bug, and then obviously COVID stopped play, and I was just
Yeah.
this aggy, like, I want a gig, I want to get that, like, and I threw myself into so many like writing gyms and where I could, because it was a slow release back to normality,
Yeah.
obviously with gigs, but I would jump at absolutely anything to get stage time
Yeah.
over that period as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted it so much, and I just poured everything in because of that fire
Yeah.
from both sides, I think. Yeah.
So, did you have expectations going into what being a comedian was all about? And what about finally getting on stage and performing surprised you?
Um, don't know if I had any conceptions about what my like individual journey would be,
Yeah.
but I think gradually the more immersed you were in it, you sort of learned the ropes of how the system worked and what sort of competitions there were and who was
Hmm.
smashing them. And I was basically looking up to people around Manchester that were breaking through.
Hmm.
Like particularly we had like Dan Tiernan who was just breaking out of open mics just as I was starting,
Hmm.
and others like Tom Lawrenson and so on, and just going, well, I would love after this graft to be in the same conversation
Hmm.
that they were at that period of their career,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was kind of the long-term vision. And over those couple of years, you're constantly torturing yourself with the question of, am I achieving that aim?
Mm.
Is it possible that I can achieve this, or is it not like, is it not aligned for me to follow that model,
Yeah.
So there's that long running thing where you're like, I poured so much into this. I've got to make it work. You know?
Do people like those names that you've mentioned, do they inspire you? Do they reinvigorate you to keep going when you see them move up the ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. And also like they're great acts
Mm.
generally, right? And whenever I'm watching something that is entirely unique to someone or they're pushing their envelope or something, it really inspires me. Like I was at McCunliffe Comedy Festival last week,
Hmm.
and I made a point where I was like, okay, I've got my own show to focus on, but I definitely still want to watch as much as I can. I kind of find myself as a comedy fan first. And yeah, I just love watching especially long form Edinburgh sort of style shows,
Yeah.
and becoming inspired by that to kind of maybe push my envelope a little bit further at times as well.
Yeah.
So,
So you're still able to watch comedy then? You haven't become jaded yet?
um, I, I would say I definitely get more excited by the longer form
Yeah.
like shows for sure. And I can watch those when it's, you know, club comedy is a little harder for me to digest sometimes because it's like I know what tricks you're doing and I know like we're doing a job and it's a bit more
Mm.
streamlined. But when it's 50 comedy nerds in a disused like a venue that isn't really a venue,
Mm.
and we're seeing your proper personality come out over it because in a 20 you can hide that. And you're going, this is the most digestible version of me for 150 people
Mm.
who have paid good money and it's showtime, right? But that transition into okay, well, this is the artistic side of it
Yeah.
is what really excites me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so sometimes I can get a bit jaded if you're on like a long, like if you've been on a lot of club comedy back to back to back, and it's like, oh, okay, like, but if you're seeing someone new for the first time,
Yeah.
that's always exciting. But if you're gigging with your friend for like the 10th time in the space of a month, and you know all the punchlines inside out, and sometimes I'm literally completing them before he said them, like behind the stage, like just miming them. So yeah.
You said about doing the writing and the performance was a lesser side, if you like. Do you see yourself as a writer who performs rather than a performer who writes?
Um, Yeah, that's it's so hard to nail, really, isn't it? Like what you are.
Mm.
Like I know people have described me before, but like I find it very hard to describe myself. Because I would say I'm more impulse driven and more instinctive.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily overanalyze, and I think there's a mixture of both going on. And they're both constantly improving,
Mm.
which is a nice thing. But I don't know what my firm identity is yet, still as a comedian,
Hmm.
which is interesting, really, because I've been going about almost 4.5, 5 years now of constant gigging, and
Hmm.
still find myself being surprised at how it kind of progresses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at what point in those first 5 years do you call yourself a comedian? When did you decide I'm a comedian now?
Um, there's such the devil's paradox of like, can I even still call myself what? Like, because I would say probably in the last year when I feel like I achieved a few things that put me in the conversation,
Hmm.
I was like, okay, it's undeniable that if I say I'm a comedian, people can look up and go, oh, okay, they're on the BBC. Okay, that is a comedian. Like,
Mm.
so. Um, I think for me it was once I started hitting like a couple of like personal goals,
Hmm.
and what was aligned, I guess, with my vision board when I was starting out. I was like, okay, I guess I'm here now. But yeah.
What were those goals, if you don't mind me asking?
Um, the BBC Comedy Awards
Yeah.
was one
Hmm.
for sure. And I guess it was as well to be in the conversation with competitions and finals. So
Yeah.
I never had a firm target of winning anything. But you know, when I was starting out, you'd see certain faces that were in the finals of everything, and it's like, okay, well, I want a year where, I guess my name is on those lineups, and people are going, oh, okay, well, Chloe's a circuit hand now of the competition circuit,
Mm.
So to have now played that part of it, and bonus to have come out of one of them with a win, it was like, okay, well, I guess I've achieved that now.
Mm.
And now it's kind of all focus on the longer form.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You've very quietly, coyly, if I might say, pointed out that you did actually just win quite an important competition. So
Yeah, stay humble.
yeah, so Leicester
Yeah.
Comedian of the Year, you took the title this year. How do you feel about competitions in general? And I suppose you said about doing BBC New Comedy, you get the nominations, you get the finals. Does winning change that perspective?
Um, Yeah, it's way easier to be supportive to other people and say competitions don't matter after you've won one. I've learned that. It's just like, but no, I think everyone's going to have their own personal relationship with it and how it affects their own well-being and how they see their own success,
Mm.
and their own achievements, and that's probably a negative side of it, right?
Mm.
But the positive is once you've achieved one,
Yeah.
you can politely then go, yeah, these don't matter. And it's like, and I no longer have to worry about this because it's done. And um, yeah, no longer have that personal battle relationship with those competitions anymore.
Mm.
But I think different competitions hold different merits, you
Right.
know. Like the BBC one for me was just like, okay, to be, I want to have that 5 minutes on the TV
Mm.
where my family can see this, and this is a moment that I can share um, with 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 my closest, really. You
Mm.
know, my mum came to watch it, and it was a really nice, proud moment. To see that. And then, I'm going around my nan's at Christmas, and now she's introducing me as a proper comic, and she's telling all the friends at Bridge Club about how I'm famous, and it's like, oh God, like it's not, but and those moments are just really, really cute,
Mm.
and I guess it was just like. I was absolutely buzzing to be there, just to be invited. Because they are very selective as to who they put on. There's a lot of really good club acts that they go, okay, well, we know mechanically
Mhm.
what you're doing is solid, but we don't think you're the right fit for this show. They're designing a TV show.
Mm.
And to have passed what were some mysterious rules that you don't know of what you had to hit. Um, I remember at the time getting that email and just jumping on my bed, and my partner at the time just having to she had to manage me, and the sort of excitement levels when that came through. So, I don't necessarily have a negative view on competitions at all. I think they really do have a place.
Mm.
However, there are positives and also downsides of it as well.
Yeah.
It's a very politician's answer, but yeah.
Well, you mentioned McCunliffe as well. So, what's been your festival experience so far, and how about the Fringe? Does that loom large now?
Yeah, so God, you're taking me back to 2023, I think it was,
Hmm.
and I ended up doing a split bill with two other comics where we were like, "Do you reckon we could just do 20s on the free fringe for like a week?" And it was the most awful, like awful show. Like, none of us really were prepared to doing 20s at this point. And we were on in, one of the karaoke rooms
Oh,
in the
and City
City
Cafe,
Cafe.
yeah.
Yeah, and we'd have like between 15 and 30 people in there at 11:30 in the morning. It was, but that was my first kind of fringe experience. But I go up every year,
Mm.
even when I haven't been performing,
Mhm.
to again just get immersed in it. I love it. It's like a comic summer camp.
Yeah.
And I love that sort of element of walking down the street and just bumping into someone, having a nice chat, and
Mm.
then maybe you go, "Oh, are you free around that? Oh yeah, this person's like," and then also and I basically have been going with this kind of long-term vision of, okay, well, I want to have a year at the Fringe where I debut and so on,
Yeah.
and I've just been scouting venues, and I've been looking at, just building that little dream board of what I'd like my debut year at the Fringe to be, and watching the acts that I have like really enjoyed, and seeing them and what they're doing,
Mm.
and just being inspired by them to kind of dig a little deeper into my writing. And there's always that balance then of writing something really interesting, but
Yeah.
then remembering that you were an open spot in the Midlands and having to do some really rough gigs, and that sort of balancing act between, I guess, what you can do in Edinburgh and maybe what you can get away with in a community hall. Um, you know, so there was that. But I've started doing a few whips
Mhm.
over the last sort of 7 or 8 months, and we got a show. We got a show,
Mhm.
and I'm really proud of, I think, what the messages are in it, and I think it fully works as a kind of, it's got its light and it's got its shade, and that's really important to me.
Mm.
But I know that if I was doing Edinburgh this year, I'd be a little scared, like, to be honest. So my plan is to go up next year,
Yeah.
and I'm doing best in class this year. So I'll
Hmm.
be doing 10 days of 20-minute spots. But really the the idea is to just get myself better prepped, and to make a few more connections when it comes to, like, okay, well, what do I need to plug gap wise
Mm.
to sort of hit Edinburgh in the best way?
Yeah.
And those are sort of coming together.
Hmm.
Um, and I know right now that the show in its current form would be a good show, but it's not what I'd want it to be.
Right.
Yeah. So the next year is to really tighten it into I'm going to be sitting down with someone who I really love, and sort of collaborate with them, who's got experience of building Edinburgh shows. And we're just gonna work on it together, and it's really exciting to have someone on board,
Yeah.
to really kind of, I guess, filter my chaos and my vision through the reality of someone that's done it before.
Mm.
Yeah.
Does that idea of the debut show, it is a big bright spotlight shining on you in that instance. Does that weigh heavily on you?
Only in an exciting way, like in a real kind of like a boxer coming in for his fight, yeah. But then at the same time, it's like I don't need to rush into this,
Mm.
you know. The crowd that would want to see me will be there next year as well as this year,
Yeah.
and I think it's better to just be like in my best form
Mm.
than it is to rush it. So very excited for it. And it's kind of, to me, my vision when I started didn't really go much further past this, to be honest. Like, this was like the goal. So
Mm.
I feel like once that happens, and hopefully in a successful manner, I can look at things more freely and not attach them emotionally to what my vision was at the start of my transition,
Mm.
and there won't be such an emotional weighting behind all the creative decisions that I'm making. So yeah, this is like the big one, the FA Cup for me. And then after that, I feel like I can approach things more level-headed.
Obviously, you're not looking too far beyond that debut as of yet, but do you have those kind of targets for yourself? What's on your vision board? What are the things the stepping stones that you see before you?
Yeah, I mean, if a fringe is successful,
Hmm.
the idea is hopefully that you could do a small tour
Yeah.
off the back of that. Um, I would love to do eventually a hometown show in Staffordshire, which is a little potted because I'm like, I don't know which town I'd do it in because I grew up over like three towns in Staffordshire. But I'd love to, do one of the theatres there and sort of show my town that I maybe have a bit of a conflicted relationship with, and be like, look, a lot of you have treated me like a joke because of, I guess, like, my sort of personal background. And I'd love to be like, look at me now. Look at me now. Like the ultimate, what you want to call it, revenge plot of entertaining them for an evening. But it will feel very sweet to do something like that. And and have that wave locally. But I think for me, it would just be people coming out to see me would be the dream, and whatever form
Mm.
that takes in, whether it's small and boutique, or whether it gets bigger. Like, that's just been kind of the dream, really, where I'm working on long form shows,
Mm.
and yeah, and people coming out to see those.
Yeah. So what about a little bit on the stage you, the stage version of you? Is that now you completely, entirely, honestly yourself, or is it a version of you, a character of you, an exaggeration of you?
It's interesting because I write traditional joke structures, right?
Hmm.
So they're set up. Some of the majority of them are rooted in a truth.
Hmm.
Um, However, we all know that we will bend that to make a joke structurally work.
Mm.
So there will be. I always say I'm balancing sincerity with silliness. Is kind of my the way I've been describing it recently to someone. I was having a chat with him recently, and I was like, I think I try and blend it and walk that line,
Yeah.
where I guess I'm telling my story. Not all elements of that story should be taken at face value, because ultimately this is the business of telling jokes, and therefore, and when I go longer form, especially what I will tend to do is I will do a minute and a half of real emotional layering
Mm.
as to like this is the real kind of like psychological things that have been going on in my brain and what's been causing it.
Mm.
And then I think they know by the point that we get to the jokes where it's like, okay, that was the true bit, and this is where we now twist it into the funny, and things take maybe different angles, and aren't necessarily the direct truth anymore. Like,
Hmm.
like maybe like the thing that someone said to me wasn't something they said to me. It's something I just heard in a general conversation, but I'll flip it into that. And yeah, I like to, especially in longer form, really put myself out there.
Mm.
Um, but knowing that jokes come first. And um, yeah, it's not necessarily observational or things that are so there's almost like two hard sections
Hmm.
of my show where it's like here's the truth and the sort of pathos and what my brain's going, and now here's a load of jokes about that subject, and it kind of builds that way.
Yeah. And how do you keep yourself entertained? How do you keep the material that you're performing, rewriting and performing over and over again? How do you make it fun for you?
um I think one element of if it's written so personally to you, or like the motivations are,
Yeah.
um, it feels like your little baby because it was a part of your soul. It might have been a part of your soul 3 years ago, but it was still a bit of you.
Mm.
And I've always been someone that writes in diary format first.
Hmm.
So one of the first things I got taught as a writing exercise was just put words to paper and don't try to be funny, was essentially it. Um, and your brain then goes into sometimes your brain is funny and it actually writes a joke during that bit, and you're like, bingo, didn't even mean to. But I think um, whatever I've been going through,
Hmm.
there's a record of it, and it just so happens to be that my life has been a little chaotic over a few years, so there's been a lot to kind of write about, and joke about. And then it's okay, well, how do I use my joke writing structure
Yeah.
to then tell this story and tell this message?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When do you think then you're happiest in that process? Is it in the writing? Is it in the performing? Where do you find your comfort zone?
Um, I do feel comfortable just diarizing, to
Mm.
be honest, like literally just spilling the heart onto a page. But I tell you what, when you're doing a new material night and you're going, okay, I'm gonna do something that I know isn't fully formed yet, but it's a real idea that I'm passionate about.
Mm.
I also know that it's incredibly risky.
Mm.
I think this is not a conventional subject for comedy. And when when that works, or when a line really gets a big roar, you're like, okay, I've achieved what I've set out to. Like,
Mm.
it might not be a fully formed routine yet, but I had a very inconvenient illness mid-transition that I guess was a really dark time for me. And then I started writing jokes about it, and it was a notoriously tricky subject to try and manage the tone of it.
Mm.
It was also the most unrelatable routine I think anyone's ever written. It's about a trans woman basically having the opposite cancer to the gender that she's transitioning into.
Mm.
And it's like, well, no one will ever be able to really relate to this. Um, you know, um, because it was a rare cancer as well. So it wasn't like like you do the Venn diagrams and it's literally just me, like in that. And um, but to make it kind of relatable
Hmm.
to people, even though none of them could directly experience that, like that really filled that creative sweet spot for me. Where I was just like, yeah, I love this. I absolutely love that I've been able to bring this topic on and bring people along for it. And these weren't at fringe audiences. These weren't at the beautiful kind of like artsy spots. We're talking a real mix of, down the middle kind of places. And to bring people in on that journey
Mm.
was fantastic. Don't get me wrong, there were still nights where it went really badly. When you're bringing that subject and you're approaching it for the first few times, it does take a bit of time for it to click. But
Mm.
seeing that process click on topics I'd never heard people talk about
Yeah.
on stage, it was just like, okay, I'm really proud of myself for creating something unique.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's when the audience response hits and it's like, okay, not only have I written this, I've written this successfully.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, that's it. Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, I mean, how important is improvisation to you? How important is that whole being adapting to being in the room when you have something that you've written that's precious, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the most adaptable in the moment, but I am adaptable in advance. Like which I think is like I approach every gig individually, and depending on the demographic where I'm playing, I feel like I know before I get to a venue, what kind of audience I'm going to be playing to.
Mm.
And I can kind of have a rough idea of going, okay, these are going to be a bit more forgiving if I decide to go down sort of riskier new material route, or okay, here maybe I have to dial the silly a bit up, rather than you know spill my heart out. Maybe I just need to do the joke structures, and things like that. And yeah, I feel like I've been reasonably good at that element of it. And
Mm.
if I'm watching a show, um, before I'm on, I can adapt my material, to how I feel the room's mood is and what the energy is,
Yeah.
and so on. But when it comes to in the moment,
Mm.
it's definitely improving, but I would say I don't necessarily feel as comfortable in that space because I'm still trying to improve those improv skills.
Mhm.
I've done a couple of podcasts and stuff where it is literally just improv and they're like, oh, fill this blank in and this is like the comedy strat, and I suck at it. I was doing an improv. I was literally like, what do you think happened next? And I literally was like, I don't know. Like, and they expected me to go on some weird, like, sort of whimsical tangent. And I kind of I do freeze occasionally on that sort of thing at the moment. But the more and more you do this, the more kind of experience you get with disruptions and heckles, and you kind of learn a general blueprint of the yes and no's to doing it.
Yeah.
there were definitely more no's at the start, where you're like, okay, I've now lost the room. And there's other things where I don't know. A lot of disruptions actually come from a nice place, even if they don't mean like they mean to,
Hmm.
but like initially the room can perceive it a different way to
Yeah, yeah.
to what it is, and I always kind of approach them from a place of I guess misunderstood love is kind of how I approach it.
Mm.
And when you really get into the conversation, you find that I had someone heckle when I was talking about being pansexual, saying that pansexual wasn't real, and then and like and you could feel like the whole room start to like really break out into different elements of discourse over it,
Mm.
and like oh like like this is and other people like and there was a real breakout, and then in the conversation, like, we were literally going for, okay, well, what do you think it is? And then I was like, well, this is what it means to me.
Mm.
And then lo and behold, we found out that technically his version of his own sexuality is technically what pansexual is. And then we end up in this beautiful moment where it's like, oh, welcome to the club. Like, like well done on coming out, and yeah, and that's probably the most improv in a while, to be fair. But it's not something that is my default, but when things come into play, I feel like I'm improving in that element for sure.
Mm.
But it's not my natural. Like I don't really love emceeing or being stuck in improv. I do like
Mm.
relying on the jokes that I've carefully crafted on,
Yeah.
and the way you deliver jokes is obviously very very mechanical is the wrong word, but you thought exactly about the cadence in which you're delivering your words,
Mm.
and you think about your hand signals
Yeah.
and your movements on stage. Um, so to then break from that is very rehearsed into improv
Mm.
is hard to merge between the two,
Mm.
for sure, because it's almost like there's one joke telling persona, and then I can't emulate that exact persona if someone's being combative or or if someone um yeah, it's quite hard to sort of be like, yeah, I'm still plugging those gaps, I think. I definitely don't feel like I'm in a war zone with it now, though. I don't feel like I'm in a panic like area if there's a disruption, if that makes sense.
Mm.
But it still doesn't come naturally to me, and I don't thrive in those scenarios all the time. But yeah, it's certainly not something I fear anymore.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't have a playbook, and I'm not like not I'm never gonna be like Paul Smith or Matt Rife or someone like that. You know.
But do you think that there's one most important lesson that you've learned so far? Something you wish Dan Tiernan had said to you, or something that you would say to an up and coming comedian who wants to follow in your footsteps?
Um, you know what? This is something I've been saying quite a lot to newer comics over like ones that appear quite stressed or seem to be maybe in the same mental headspace I was a few years ago. And I don't know I don't know how good the advice is, to be honest, but the piece of advice is that no gig individually matters.
Mm.
And therefore take the stress off yourself about worrying about how this audience has responded to you, or the anxiety of I need this gig to go well.
Mm.
When in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't. The amount of gigs that occur up and down the country every night,
Mm.
no one's remembering this apart from you and maybe two or three of your friends that also share open mics.
Mm.
If you bomb, it's gonna be forgotten about very quickly. And if you thrive in that set, it's gonna be over even quicker.
Mm.
It's no one's remembering things apart from you. And what I would say is it's more look at gigs over a section of time.
Mm.
So like over a period of like 3 months. And it's like, okay, are the bookings coming in more thick and fast over this point? Are the gigs getting like, more higher status bills, like more on the pro circuit? And also, is the crowd response improving more consistently?
Mm.
Like, all those little analysis points of like, okay, well, my 15s or 20s used to feel like I had my 10 and then I was gluing in the best of my newer stuff in between. Like, is it more consistent now?
Yeah.
Am I able to control a larger room? And all those little things. And it's not on an individual basis because we all know there are way too many variables with comedy
Mm.
that you can't kill a room and go, that's because I was great. Like there's so many variables that come in with regards to your position, with regards to how well the night has been ran from an audience crowd, like emceeing perspective, and it's about looking at it as collective
Mm.
rather than individual and going, am I improving and am I making the right steps? And then I would say most of comedy for me has been analysis. Um, like watching myself back and watching the bits that maybe have like dipped off a bit or watching the newer material that I've done that's worked and gone, okay, how do I replicate
Yeah.
this delivery or build on what I'm doing,
Mm.
And yeah, that would be my main advice, which is like try and detach yourself from the individual stress
Mm.
of a gig because it doesn't help. And as soon as you realize that things became a lot more stress free for me,
Mm.
and I was a lot more calmer on stage, and I was a lot more confident, and that radiates onto crowds as well, and naturally it just becomes easier,
Yeah.
weirdly. Yeah.
So, what so far do you think have been the single worst and best experiences you've had through comedy?
I can tell you my worst one.
Everyone always knows the worst one straight away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, God, we're talking like one of my first gigs.
Mhm.
And I was doing a 10-minute kind of, one of those nights where I think it was a buckets, but I don't know if anyone actually raised any money from it. It was in an open bar, so there was no other room for it.
Mm.
And you had sports playing above you, and there was no one on the door to manage who was coming in and out.
Mhm.
And you had about 8 people spread out over about 100 seats. Um, and I reckon six of those were, well, no, maybe half of them were comedians or whatever, but like there wasn't many of us and it was really sparse and
Mm.
there was no atmosphere in the night at all. And I was maybe on like in the middle or something. And just as I came on, a gaggle of drunk women walked in and they were absolutely hammered and drowning out everything that I was saying, like on the stage. And I wasn't experienced enough to deal with it. And um, mentally, I maybe wasn't in the right place, like maybe a bit stressed and putting too much importance on things like this and
Mm.
so on. And one of them literally like answered the phone and was like shouting down the phone, getting her mate to like come into the venue, and they were just being so disruptive. And this guy from the audience shouted, "Get her on the stage." But in my brain, I heard, "Get off the stage."
Mm.
And instead of clarifying or instead of approaching it from a place of like, or maybe misunderstand it or like trying to get to the I just went in on this poor guy and I went in on him so badly. And I was just like, look, I'm here performing for no money. Look how shit this night, like this off, like I could be dating, I could be having a nice time, I could be going out drinking, and instead look where the fuck I am in this moment right now. And then he corrected me and was like, "This is what I actually said," and I just went, "Sorry about that." And I then tried to carry on with my set, and however low and bad the atmosphere was already, it had gone to absolute pinpoint drop-offs.
Mm.
And it was a bad quality night anyway.
Mm.
But my God, I was the worst of that. And absolutely, yeah, like it was absolutely atrocious. And yeah, it's like thank God that's like a distant thought in my brain now. Um, yeah.
What about the other side? What about the best moment so far?
Um, We've already touched. There's probably like two or three.
Mhm.
Like Leicester is obviously a massive one
Mm.
for me because the like a lot of comics like before you have that kind of hook from the industry, you don't really feel like you belong in it.
Mhm.
Or the majority don't anyway. Like some do, like before like a competition win and so on. But being based in the Midlands and sort of doing the hard knocks, so to speak, as opposed to if I was like God, it's going to sound negative on London, which it isn't, but like obviously the industry is very London focused, and I felt kind of a little bit ignored. And I was kind of just plugging away, doing my own thing, and I'm like,
Mm.
maybe this isn't what the industry wants, a sort of um working class trans woman who like isn't this pretty frail kind of character, but instead is eating Scotch eggs behind an Asda, and I'm just like, I don't like, does anyone want that? I don't know, like and and to kind of feel like, okay, well, the industry saw me on that stage and went, yeah, like we see it
Mm.
was amazing, and obviously um to kind of have the name read out. Like they recorded my name being read out as the winner, and you can literally see the breakdown mentally as they're calling it out. I literally just combust. And I needed about 3 or 4 minutes in a broom cupboard afterwards to just let all my sort of like autistic overloading and overstimulation out. And it was just weird little noises just popping in and out. And yeah. So, that for me was just huge. But there were many moments across that journey, like
Mm.
winning Beat the Frog, weirdly, on a Monday was hugely like um I remember watching Beat the Frog before I started doing stand-up,
Mm.
and um, I think that being one of the decisions to go for it and give it a go, and also the fact that I never won it on like my first few goes, it really took me a lot of effort to
Mm.
kind of get there. So to feel like, oh, okay, like finally good enough, I won it, like yeah, those little moments have yeah been probably the most joyous. Yeah.
Mm. So, how can listeners find out all about you and where they can come and see you performing?
Yeah, so I'm based in Manchester now. So
Mhm.
if you're up in the north, then my radius is now anywhere from on a weeknight, I should add, anywhere from Yorkshire down to Birmingham, is my traveling radius.
Mhm.
So you may see me around there. But to keep up to date with gig listings, the typical social medias, Instagram is probably the one
Mhm.
where, as a millennial, I am more up to date with keeping it up to date with all the info. And there will be several whips. Most of the ones that I was doing have just been. And the way I'm dealing with it at the moment is I'm doing a few whips, then working on it heavily, and then I'll do a few more whips because I still am changing the structure and I'm changing
Mhm.
the form of the show. So those will be announced over the next coming weeks. And they vary from down in the Midlands up to like Newcastle and so on. So yeah, keep your eye out because I'm spreading further than my hour and a half travel radius.
And so we come to my last question then, of course. Chloe, how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
Um, I mean, for me, it's been a very kind of personal
Mm.
journey as well. And it's not, God, it's so cheesy as well, but it's not just been the medium of the art form for me. It's really helped me with my own confidence, with my own self-worth, and that personal journey as well, kind of coinciding.
Mm.
So for me, it has kind of become my life. I'm so immersed in it to the point where I meet civilians that aren't involved. It's hard to relate sometimes. I'm dating someone at the moment, and he absolutely loves how immersed I am in it, and he's just like, I would never have had this level of insight. It's just always on my brain in a
Mm.
kind of it has such a positive um, influence over me, and it's such a nice thing to have consume my brain
Mm.
after having various challenges of other things consuming my brain.
Mm.
And to have comedy be that dominant thing there is just such a nice spot to be in.
Mm. Chloe, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thank you.